So you're thinking you kind of want to take the leap of faith and finally get some of your own reptiles and whatnot. Well, I'm going to tell you today that that's probably one of the worst decisions you could ever make. I'm Sam with Sodas Exotics. Today we're going to be talking about why the reptile hobby is the worst hobby you could ever do. Stay tuned. Now, a little disclaimer, this isn't to try to push anybody away from doing this hobby, and I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. I'm just kind of trying to explain what you're actually going to be getting into. And there's a lot more factors than you may think when it comes to becoming part of the reptile community. Now, the first reason why the reptile hobby absolutely sucks is the toxicity. And I'm not talking about venomous reptiles or possibly poisonous amphibians and whatnot. I am talking the community itself is one of the most toxic communities out of any group of people I've ever seen or met in my life. And what I'm trying to say with this is that you have YouTubers who talk crap about other YouTubers. If you are in any Facebook groups and let's say you post just any picture of an enclosure and it's just the minor detail or even a huge detail that's completely wrong, instead of trying to correct you, people will just start bashing you. I would assume it was like this on Reddit forums and stuff and whatnot, but it's really shady. And I hate to say it because this hobby is very fragile in itself already. There's a lot of groups out there that are trying to end this hobby for good. I'm sure most of you have heard of the Lacey acts that have happened. There's differences happening with it and it might not pull through, but if we didn't know about this, our community doesn't support each other enough to try to prevent stuff like this. Now, I'm not saying that the actual community itself, we don't support USARK, which are the reptile, it's the reptile group that basically fights for our rights as reptile keepers. I'm saying it's just really fragile in the sense that everybody has something to say about everyone. Everyone thinks they're right about something. No one can take constructive criticism or even just regular criticism. And it's kind of similar to like your freshman year relationship. That's what the reptile community is like. That is how toxic this community is for people. Now, the second reason why you shouldn't be joining the reptile hobby is the cost. It is incredibly expensive to buy animals, to house animals, to keep animals, to transport animals. If you need to take them to a vet, it's very expensive for the vets. You might even not have vets in your local area. So with this, and don't get me wrong, there's other hobbies out there. There's the car people. Cars are not cheap. There's video gamers. There's PCs are not cheap. But it's like this for animals too. And I'm not saying this is more expensive than other hobbies, but it is more expensive than some and it's not as expensive as others. The third reason why the reptile hobby is absolutely garbage is with most animals, you have to deal with death. It's part of the cycle of life. If you have a dog or cat, it's going to die one day. Reptiles is the same thing. Fortunately, though, with reptiles, for the most part, they seem to be a little bit more susceptible to things like respiratory infection, getting mites, getting infections and stuff like that. If you're housing multiple animals together, that can cause some problems. So you might pay $300 for an animal that literally ends up living a month. And it is terrible having to deal with that. I've had to deal with it. Any of you that keep reptiles or any animals for that matter have certainly had to deal with death. Now, when dealing with death, you got to keep in mind if you get a sick animal or an animal that's dying, do you have a vet nearby? Do you have an exotic vet that can take care of reptiles and stuff that normal vets typically don't? That could be very difficult. And let's say you get an animal and you're living in an area where there's no vets around, you may have to drive hours just to get a vet. You gotta think that's gas time, that's money, that's gas to go back. You might have to go back multiple times. I've personally had this happen to me where I've had to go to the vet multiple times, and I'm lucky enough that I live close to 2 different vets around me, but this isn't the case for everybody else. You gotta keep in mind, you need the resources to be able to take care of your animals and keep them healthy. Now, probably the final reason why the reptile hobby sucks is it's really just not for everybody. You can think getting an animal like a gecko here, super cool at first, it's really interesting, but what happens 3 months from now if you go down the road and you end up getting bored of the animal? It happens a lot. People get bored of what they have. I'm very thankful that I'm not like this. I enjoy coming in and seeing the animals and watching them do what they do, but this isn't the case for everybody. There's people who will spend a bunch of money on animals and they end up just getting bored of it. And then you gotta think, they're either gonna rehome it, they're gonna take it to a shelter, they could do some more explicit means of getting rid of animals, which not many people do with stuff like that. But you got to keep in mind that you got to be committed. This is not something that's going to be a year or two. You have reptiles that can live up to 20 years, even more. So keep that in mind if you're wanting to get into this hobby. So with that, again, I'm not trying to persuade anyone to not get into the hobby or to leave it. There's a lot of wrong with the hobby. There really is. It's like this for all hobbies. But if you can get past that, getting to see these animals thrive in your own setups is very, very satisfying. There is nothing better than just being able to walk around your room, your animal room, or even a cage that's displayed in somewhere, and just seeing an animal do its natural thing, wandering about its enclosure. It is one of the greatest feelings you can have. So for me, that's why I love doing this. It's something that literally brings me joy, and I'm not getting burnt out from it, I think. Hopefully. But with that being said, just when you're thinking about joining the reptile hobby, keep all this stuff in mind. A lot of stuff, especially with the toxicity of it, a lot of forums and Facebook groups, they're going to tell you what to do, but better to ask questions and not show pictures and explain a situation, but it can be confusing. Definitely do your research with everything and keep in mind that this is a long time commitment. So thank you so much for watching. I really hope you could hit that subscribe button for me. I'm very thankful that we actually recently just hit 100 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for it. It's honestly by no means nothing compared to what other people get, but for me, it's a huge milestone and I am so happy for it. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next Sunday.